any anxieties I would have had or any suffering from any anxieties would have been burned away with the race and the experience, simply because it was so hard that you just had to reach a level and punch past so much to finish. It's something that kind of builds up, and you're fighting, and sometimes pretending that everything's going to be okay, and then you're going through all the emotions of trying to trick yourself or fool yourself or motivate yourself or whatnot to keep going. But you kind of know deep down that the race is over. He was there, but he wasn't there. And there was other people, other competitors in that tent that were physically there, but mentally not there. It was really strange, kind of surreal experience to be in and to have people like that around you. But I wasn't as bad as them. I was physically as bad, but mentally, I just had that little bit of fire, and I saw it as an opportunity.
Today's conversation is about what happens before the starting line, before effort begins, inside the mind. We have a very special guest today. He's an ultra runner who has spent many years deliberately stepping outside his comfort zone and into, let's say, extreme endurance environments. He has completed the notorious Marathon des Sables, which is arguably one of the toughest ultramarathons on the planet. He has finished Ironman races, ultramarathons, and marathons around the world. Next month, Barry, our guest, will be running the Beyond the Ultimate, a multi-day ultramarathon in the Arctic along the polar circle. Barry is also the co-founder of InwardUp, which is a company Barry and I founded together, and really a project that has been born from his experience with fear, doubt, and really learning how to stay steady inwardly when things become rough. Today, we don't want to talk too much about performance, medals, finishing times. We're going to be talking about the inner experience and what it takes to push one's limits to the extreme and to stepping into the unknown. Barry, before we talk about the race, how do you feel today? How was today's training run?
Today was it was kind of a gym session, but it was a cardio session in the gym. So I did ski erg for 30 minutes. I'm on a recovery week this week. So normally I would do like a ski erg, a row, or an assault bike combo for 50 minutes to an hour. But because I'm on a recovery week this week, I'm doing just 30 minutes. So it was a nice kind of refresh, like an easier session to have to do, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't that taxing.
And I can imagine you've been preparing for this race for months now. If you speak out the word Arctic out loud, what does it do to you? What do you feel?
Well, it's the Arctic Circle, so we need to be accurate where we're going. So it's not directly towards the North Pole, but to me, what does it mean to me? It's probably just cold and getting ready for the cold and wondering how I'm going to react to extreme cold temperatures. Wondering about my kit and my gear and all the unknowns. How they're going to go. So that's what that word would mean to me, the Arctic.
Any emotions that come up?
Just excitement. Really looking forward to the challenge. I wouldn't say nervousness, but just want to get going. I don't know if that's an emotion, but just want to get in there, get stuck into it, because I've been training for it for so long, and I've been thinking about it for so long. When you get to a point, you just want to go and do it. So that'd be I don't know if they're emotions, but they're the thoughts along the emotions.
For someone hearing about Beyond the Ultimate Arctic race the first time, how would you explain it to them?
It is a multi-stage ultramarathon race. So it will be made up of 5 stages, which is 230 kilometers in length total. The stages would vary from the first stage is 50 kilometers, the second is 42, the third is 42, the fourth stage is 65 kilometers, and the final stage is called a sprint. It's 15 kilometers. So we would be going from point to point. So we get picked up in a place called Gallivare in northern Sweden, and we get bussed out an hour and a half north. And we essentially run back down 230 kilometers to a place called Jokkmokk, where we finish. And it's what would they call multi-stage, where we would camp overnight. In this instance, we'll be camping in like teepees and huts provided along the way, which is the King's Trail, which is a 19th century trail, the King's Trail in northern Sweden. And there would be these huts and safety huts along the way that we'll be camping out in. So we have to bring all our safety gear, our food, our sleeping bags with us. Although we can give the organisers 6 kilos of weight to bring to each biovac or biovac, whatever you call it, each night. So that's your sleeping bag, your night wear, and your night shoes and stuff like that. So essentially, run a marathon, get in, finish your marathon, recover, eat, sleep, and repeat. It's very simple. It's a very simple life. It's just essentially running and fueling your run and resting and recovering. And it's actually really nice to be able to do. It's hard at the time, but in retrospect, it's a very simple way of living. I will hope to have no phone or no technology. I think you may have to have a phone for safety, but I won't be on Instagram checking posts while I'm there. So it's nice to get away from it all, while at the same time it's well organized and safe. We may be running through the wilderness for 5 days, but with GPS and safety teams and whatnot, it's still a pretty safe environment to be in.
And Barry, I mean, you have run the Marathon des Sables, which is a similar race in terms of distance and, let's say, extreme weather conditions, just that was in the desert. What do you think does this race in the Arctic make different? Like, what's the fundamental difference there, running it in snow and, at the Arctic Circle?
I think they're actually quite similar in that the obvious difference is temperature, but apparently you lose your body heat in 8 minutes there. So if something were to happen or you were to stop, within 8 minutes you are cold and you may be out of the race. And similarly in the Sahara, on the really hot days, there were times that if you took time out or you took too long, you may get too hot and dehydrated and you're out of the race. So whilst there are different climates and terrains, it's the same principle in that you keep going and you don't stop until you're finished and then recover and go again. And in the Marathon des Sables, the year we did it in 2023 was known as the hot year. So there was a heat wave in North Africa and Southern Europe at the time. And I think a lot of people succumbed to heat exhaustion, heat stroke, weren't prepared, found it tough going and had to quit. There was about a 30% DNF rate in the Marathon des Sables. So these races condition you to do the same thing within each race. And that's really simple. It's just don't stop. So they can be very similar in a way.
You say don't stop. Maybe walk us through, for those of us who have never run such a race, who can hardly imagine running such a race. Walk us through a day, let's say a normal day, race day. Like, what do you do?
Well, in the instance of the Marathon des Sables, we would wake up at about first light. It was funny, everyone would kind of wake around the same time. This was within a tent, and we're lying on like these mats, Moroccan mats, in a tent in the Sahara. And there was 8 men in the tent, in our tent, and we'd wake up and you have your torches on and you start getting your breakfast ready, get food in, Once we got food in, we start getting dressed and getting ready to begin the stage. But for me, what I would do is I would spend a lot of time centering myself and getting ready mentally for the race. So obviously sports psychology courses and all that, and learning more about meditation. I was kind of meditating before I knew what I was doing, and I was using meditation in a way to get ready for stages. Whereas my colleagues in the tent at the start of the race were kind of looking at me, wondering what I was doing. And towards the end of the race, they were nearly copying what I was doing, kind of just lying there, chilling, focusing on my breath. And that's how you would begin until the Berbers would come and take down the tents. And once the tents were down, you're exposed to the sunlight. And you'd make your way to the start line, and then the race would start. And that's how every day would start.
And how would it end?
It would end depending on the day. There was obviously different stages in the Marathon des Sables with different terrains. The Sahara is, a lot of people think of just like endless sand dunes for the Sahara, but it's actually quite mountainous in a way. They call them Sables. So these mountains of like rock, and they're incredibly hot. So some stages had a lot of Sables, some stages had a lot of sand, some stages were quite flat, and the race would end depending on how long you had to run. So I think the shortest stage I had was about 5 or 6 hours, and the longest stage was 23 hours. And it would end with, in the Sahara, you would get a cup of tea, Moroccan tea, upon finishing, which was like gold. And you would get a 5-litre drum of water, and make your way back to the tent and just rehydrate, do your feet maintenance, refuel with food. We'd have these expedition meals, food meals, and we would rehydrate the foods. Eat your dinner, wait for your teammates, your tent mates to come back one by one. And for me, what I did was and what I hope to do in the Arctic was I used to lie down and do nothing. I just chilled, focus on my breath. And other than getting up and going to the toilet, that's all I did for the duration of the week in the desert.
Wow. And now circling back to the Arctic Circle, where do you think will there be differences in your daily routine and in running that race? I can imagine there will be huskies and sleds instead of jabbals and Moroccan tea, or how do you picture that?
There will be, it's obviously the snow, and what they do is they, depending on how cold it is, how much snow there is, they will mark the track on the day prior, and then so they use a skidoo or a ski to put a trail on the track, and then that freezes, and then you run on the frozen snow with snowshoes. So will I have to use snowshoes every day, or will I be able to run in my Gore-Tex runners? I'm sure that the local Sami people are the local tribe, and I'm sure they've got huskies and stuff. There is a little bit of climbing that you wouldn't expect in the Arctic Circle. There's Kabbalah, I think, is a mountain. It's about 800 meters of ascent. There's lakes, frozen lakes, so they can get very icy. I think there's a certain type of snow on the ice. And I think the Sami people themselves have 60 words for snow. So there's going to be a huge variation in the type of snow, type of terrain, type of underfoot running conditions. And then getting back to huts and teepees, where they'll be like saunas, because they'll have fires and stoves inside them, because it could be anything from -10 to -40 outside. Will there be wind chill? What will the wind be like? There's so many variables that you just don't really know what's going to come, and you have to be kind of prepared for everything.
It sounds absolutely mental, Barry, just like Marathon des Sables as well. So from your experience going through such a race day, what is the hardest part of the day to be with?
Within the actual stage race, is it what part is the hardest?
Yeah.
Probably there's always a point where it's incredibly hard and you've a long way to go. So say if you've like in the instance of the Marathon des Sables, where we reached these jebels, and one was so steep that we had to use a rope to climb it. And when you're moving incredibly slow in incredible heat with a long way to go to complete, that's hard. Like knowing that you've got another 2 or 3 hours of this before you can get something to eat or sit down or recover or get some shade. That's incredibly hard. There were points within the Marathon des Sables where we would have sought out shade like water, or as much as water, to rehydrate. Seeking out the shade was as important as rehydration, and these points are quite hard. And when you're in them, it's very hard to get past them until you are physically past them and you continue to go. It's very hard to explain unless you're in it, but every race has a point where you wish for it to be over, or you wonder why you're doing it, or you wonder, are there easier ways of proceeding in life? But when in retrospect, and that's when these experiences are most enjoyed, are in retrospect. And in retrospect, you really want these experiences. You really want the extreme wind or the extreme wind chill or the extreme heat, because they're the ones that make it memorable. The races where it's pretty easy going, you forget about them very quickly. It's the hard races that you remember the most.
Yeah, now you're talking already about experiences. And if I think of running through the desert or running along the Arctic Circle, I think of vast, empty landscapes. Is there an element of solitude there as well? How alone do you feel when you run these races?
I never felt alone, but I like solitude. Like I like being alone, but I never feel alone, if that makes sense. And in the desert, they reckon that, or they say that people go back a lot to the Marathon des Sables because the expanse of the desert is addictive. And that's the draw of the desert that I would never have known about unless I was there. And you wouldn't understand unless you're there, because there's nothing for you to focus your attention on, because it's so vast and wide and open. And that's why people, because it's so vast, it's so expansive, it kind of expands your own mind too, being there. And it's that expansion that is addictive to a lot of people that go back to the desert. And in the same instance, having read books about, say, the polar explorers, Tom Crean or Shackleton, they also talk about the vast expanses of the Arctics and South Pole or whatever also. And I'm guessing that in the Arctic Circle, where there are points where it is vast and it is open, that it would be very enjoyable to be there alone, but I doubt I would feel alone once more, that you kind of enjoy being in that vastness. And in Ireland, you don't get really many chances to be in vast, because it's a very kind of small country and hilly and drumlinny and stuff. It's rare that you find a geographical area that you feel small in, and that this is vast. There are parts of Kerry maybe that during races I kind of gone, wow, this is cool. Like this seems very vast here, but it's rare. And so to be in that vastness is really cool. And I would certainly never feel alone in it. So whether that's a spiritual thing, I think of someone with me, or I don't know, it's a funny one, but you would think, considering there's only going to be 40 competitors in this race compared to 1,000 competitors in the Marathon des Sables, that it would be lonely, but I don't feel it's going to be.
Maybe lonely or being alone was also not the right way of putting it. Maybe it's more a sense of isolation, right? You within that group are running in that vastness, and there must be some sense of isolation, of expansion, as you mentioned it. And if you think back of your race in the desert with the Marathon des Sables, was there anything specific that came up when you had this experience of vastness, when you had this experience of, hey, I'm running here in the desert? You described, a certain opening of your mind. Is there anything else that came up for you?
There was on the long stage, which was 90 odd kilometers, and that was an incredible experience where at about 60 or 70 kilometers into the race, we got to the biovac, and it was obviously late into the night and people were getting tired. So some people opted to sleep, and there was like this real warm, friendly, nearly festival vibe about the biovac. Like it was like a music festival, and so the tents were all lined up, and you could go in and rest in the tents. And I thought that in this instance, I would go in and I would like catch a cat nap or something and get a sleep. And I was that tired that somebody lied against me. And normally if someone touched you on the bus or whatever, or on the train, you kind of pull back to your own personal space. But I guess we were both that tired that like we both lied against each other and we didn't move away from each other. And this is a complete stranger. That's how tired I was. And I was like lying in a warm bath. But the amazing thing was that once I drifted off to sleep for maybe 10, 15 minutes, a voice in the back of my head, my own voice, not somebody else's voice or anything else, my own voice told me to get up and to get going again. Like, Barry, get the fuck up, essentially, something like that, get up. And I was talking to myself, kind of agreeing with myself, because all right, I get going, I get up now, I'll go. And that is a surreal thing to happen, to be so tired and allowed, if I want, to rest, because we had 36 hours to complete this stage. I had all the time in the world. But for something within me, above me, around me, or a higher version of me to tell me to get up and get going again was a really surreal experience. And it happened twice, because after each 10 kilometers to be another biovac. And I did the same thing again. But the second time it happened, it's like, okay, I got up. I actually got up quicker when I was told to get up. And I don't know then, because you get so tired and deranged, and you start hallucinating and seeing things. And like, I saw what was like 3 desert foxes. I saw people doing snow angels in the sand, and you're following lights that maybe they are not there. And I don't know if all those things were real, but essentially I kept going throughout all of this and finished the long stage in about 23 hours, really fast and really well. And that was just an incredible, like, otherworldly experience, but not out of body experience. It was within my own body, within my own mind, within my own self. And to this day, I don't know where it came from, or how it was manufactured, or what created it, because it's never happened to me before. It's never happened since. And it really is just like about the power of self, I think, because it's just all speculation. And it's incredibly hard to explain, because nobody understands the difficulty of where we were at. But I was first man home in my tent after that stage. So I performed really well too, considering. And it was just really cool. And I often, when you think and dream about these experiences and events, I would often be drawn back to those particular moments. Like, they were really, really cool.
Fascinating. I mean, other people take mushrooms, you run through the desert.
Yeah, could do that the next time. It'd be easier, yeah.
Now thinking about the Arctic race again, it's 15th of February, right? So that's less than a month away.
4 weeks, yeah.
If you think about it, what scares you most about this race, physically, mentally?
Nothing really. I'm not scared. The only thing I think I should be conscious of is being overconfident or cocky. I know from Ironman, when I did my second Ironman, I got a bit cocky, and it's like a thing with Ironman triathlons. Your second one, you get a bit overconfident on, and I did one and I was a bit overconfident and I got my ass handed to me. So I'm conscious of being cocky or overconfident and keeping like kind of my humility in check about what I'm doing and taking it serious and preparing as well as I did for the first multi-stage ultramarathon. So they would be my only fears, is just taking the foot off the gas as regards preparation, thinking, oh, well, I did that one in the desert, there's nothing that can break me, which is patently untrue. So that would be my only fears, I suppose, is not to finish or to have something prevent me from finishing, because I won't be able to do any more of these events with my hip. So I don't want a hard luck story. I want to go there, finish it and enjoy it in retrospect.
Have you spent some thoughts on what it would mean to you not finishing that race?
No. Interesting question. I have not. And I don't think I ever would, because I, for example, have not taken out any insurance on I've taken insurance, in the event that something bad happens, that you have to have mandatory insurance, but I haven't taken out insurance on, we'll say, something happens and you can't do the race, like you get sick, because there's nothing going to prevent me from finishing this race, if you get me. So I don't need that insurance. So no, I haven't thought about that, because it's just not going to happen.
Like it. Barry, now, I guess you've been talking about the preparation for this race. You have probably prepared for it for many months. There's sort of the physical aspect to it, doing your training runs, doing your strength and conditioning. There's the logistical aspect of it. I guess there's a lot of logistics that goes into it. There's a mental aspect to it, mental, emotional aspect to your preparation. If we think about being prepared for this race, what does it mean to you at this point?
About being prepared for this race?
Yeah.
It means being strong. So I felt strong for the first time last weekend. It's a feeling. It comes as a result of a good plan. It's not something that can be done incorrectly or done haphazardly. It has to be done properly. And it's a culmination of time, of all the components of training. And it feels like you are peaking. And that is what I felt for the first time last weekend in a long time. I felt a physical peak. And the physical peak is a mental peak too. And my coach actually dialed it back this week, interestingly enough. And we'll put the foot on the gas again next week. And then it's a taper. So it's just a wonderful way to be going towards the latter stages of the training for this race, to feel the way I'm feeling. It's pretty cool.
I find it very interesting that you mentioned a feeling. Like being prepared to you means a feeling of being strong. Mm-hmm. Do you have any, say, inner practices, rituals or habits, or really just practices that help you generate that feeling, or that help you really stay resourced at this point of your training?
The practices would be your Anna's meditations in Spanish, because obviously I don't want to listen to my own meditations. It'd be a bit weird. Be nearly, the levels of ego there would be untold amounts. So I think Anna's body scans and drawing attention to the body, both before and after sessions, because I have to work on my hip with my hip issue. After training, after running especially, it's an opportunity to decompress. And I find it's a good point then to do a meditation. And because I'm trying to learn a little bit of Spanish, I find that doing the meditation in Spanish is kind of cool, that I'm learning all the different words and where things are, and drawing my attention to those areas or to those parts of the body. And you have to really focus because it's in another language on it. And I find it really works really well with what I'm doing as regards decompressing my hip and my leg and being fully focused on myself in that moment rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it. You really are there just focused on oneself and scanning oneself. And I think that's important for body management, mind management, and these sort of events, that you can scan in a positive sense, because when you're injured, sometimes you scan in a negative sense and you scan looking for issues, going through your body, going through different muscle groups, looking for the problem. Whereas this is different. It's scanning in a positive sense and allowing the body to rest and recover and knock off. And I think that's quite important.
And I can imagine you have a bunch of different things, maybe rituals in your mental toolkit to be able to run such races. But in your experience, when you really push yourself beyond your own limits, when you're really like going through these, let's say, throughs, these valleys in such a crazy race, what are the things that fall away? What are the things that don't work for you anymore in these extreme situations?
Doesn't work. Anything motivational does not work. Any sort of pop psychology or pop motivation, or I remember I did an ultra marathon before, and I listened to a podcast with David Goggins, who I actually quite like. He's a former SEAL ultra marathoner guy. He's really hardcore. And I listened to this podcast with him thinking that it would get me over the line for the final 20 kilometers. And I actually blew up really bad. And it took me 3 hours or 4 hours to do the final couple of kilometers. It's ridiculous. So that doesn't work, So I think what works, once you are physically healthy, your nutrition is good, and you're not depleting in carbohydrates or energy or anything, I think the necessity to stay grounded and to be able to move forward with purpose, not getting too outside of your body, but being able to kind of come in and come out, to associate and disassociate with your own body. You don't want to disassociate too much, but you want to draw yourself sort of like to the ends of the road, to the next tree or the next pillar or the bend on the road, but not take you away too much out of where you are. It's a fine line. And I think for mid-pack runners or back of the pack runners where I am at now, it's something that takes experience and time to figure out. I'm not sure the pro runners that they would do anything like this. They seem to have enough talent and ability and mental strength maybe to power on. I have never really come across any of the top ultra runners in Ireland or around the world mention anything like what I experience and go through. So I think it's something possibly that's different for many people, and how they experience and what they do and how they deal with it.
Yeah, and you already mentioned those points in a race, and I guess it's quite normal to experience that in such a extreme race, is the point where you don't want to continue, where you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Where it costs you so much effort to continue. If you anticipate that moment in the Arctic, what do you see? How do you see yourself in that situation?
If I was to anticipate not wanting to continue,
yeah,
I wouldn't anticipate that. It's not something that I would. It has happened. On a previous race, I didn't want to continue. I pulled out of the Kerryway 200, and it was over. But I wouldn't go into a race with an anticipation that I didn't want to continue or wasn't going to continue. It's just not something that would come into my one dialogue.
If you think back of the moments where you had these thoughts, can you describe those moments? What went through your mind?
In the Kerryway 200, I was just a broken man. I was just broken. I can remember my wife, who was on my team, trying to play tricks on me to get me to keep going, and I was like, no, I've had enough. She had a footballer from Mayo called Rachel Kearns call me to get me going again. I was like, I'm not going any further. I'm done here. And to pull out or to know you're done in such a race is a horrible experience. It happens to everyone at some point, and it's nearly a learning experience where you know all you did to get there, why it went wrong, and it's something that never leaves you. And it's important for every runner to experience, let's say every ultra runner, because even though it's a very short term win, you finish, you get to sit down, you get to say a bag of chips and get driven home and go to bed. In the preceding days and weeks and months and years, it just gnaws away at you, and it really angers you, drives you, fuels you to never experience that again, because it's just horrible. And it doesn't happen. It builds up over time. It's not something just unless you twist your ankle or you break your leg or something. It's something that kind of builds up, and you're fighting, and sometimes pretending that everything's going to be okay, and then you're going through all the emotions of trying to trick yourself or fool yourself or motivate yourself or whatnot to keep going. But you kind of know deep down that the race is over, and it's a denial, and you can be in denial for hours. But then that denial reaches a point where it's just the place of no return. And when you're done, and it's not nice. And I don't want to experience that ever again.
Barry, that's such a deep one. You just mentioned, you know it deep down, because that was exactly my follow-up question would be like, how do you discern the moments where you just need to pull through, where you just need to push yourself, where you are at your limits, but you know that there's still something there for you to push through, and distinguish that from those moments where you actually have to give up, where you actually have to terminate the race?
Well, in the Marathon des Sables, we'd gone 30K on that long day, the day I had that higher power. And a group of us were in a tent, and we were all hallucinating. It was incredibly hot. We had 60Ks to cover still. And there was a guy in the tent who sadly is not with us anymore. And he was in this like recovery tent with me, and he was there, but he wasn't there. And there was other competitors in that tent that were physically there, but mentally not there. It was really strange, kind of surreal experience to be in, and to have people like that around you. But I wasn't as bad as them. I was physically as bad, but mentally, I just had that little bit of fire, and I saw it as an opportunity. But physically, I could have been as bad as it was in Kerry that time I pulled out. But I just didn't have that mental, whatever it was, to keep going. And it's very hard to explain why you would be physically so bad and want to give up, and then another day be physically so bad and not want to give up, or still have loads of juice left in the tank. I don't know why. There's a hard and fast about it, but I'd say a lot of people at that point on that race, on that stage, on the long stage in the Marathon des Sables, gave up, and they physically could not continue or mentally could not continue. Whereas a lot of us were able to, saddle up and get going again, and could have been just lucky. I could have just prepared correctly. or just had something special to me that happened to me that day, whereas others didn't have something special happen to them that day. It could be as simple as that.
And you describe these situations, Barry, especially in the Marathon des Sables race, that are, well, one could call them nearly spiritual, no? You have these, I mean, you talk about hallucinations, you talk about these inner voice that speaks up. To me, this sounds like a very potentially transformational experience for you as the person, Barry. Would you say that it is a stretch to say that these kind of races change something in you? They make you a different person?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Well, I think, growth is a huge word in sports psychology and in the mental performance industries. I think that the growth that people experience in such events like this is it's like growth on crack. It's kind of like there's so much growth. It's nearly what do you do with all the growth. And I think everyone in our tent that made it, like 6 guys out of 8 made it that day, I think everyone grew in a certain way and went on to do other things. And everyone, I'm sure, that completed the race that year grew. But personally, I know personally that, like, any anxieties I would have had or any suffering from any anxieties would have been burned away with the race and the experience, simply because it was so hard that you just had to reach a level and punch past so much to finish. And these are the things that sort of happen to people in these type of events, that they're just simply so hard, and you have to find something within yourself to keep going. And more people would have climbed Mount Everest than would have done and completed the Marathon des Sables. It's on, I think it's heading for its 40th year soon. And there's 30 something thousand people would have finished the race. So there's more people have climbed Everest at this stage. And I think now it's changed owners since. I don't think it's as difficult now. They've the new owners have made some changes that have maybe had completion rates come a bit higher. So we had the last really hard year. And it's still a very hard race, don't get me wrong, but there's certain things now, like they're giving people cool water and cool pads for their necks and stuff, which we didn't have, which I think helps a lot in earlier start times. So to summarize, I think that the levels of growth is nearly in the level of dreaming that continues long after this race is completed. That every now and again you'll go to sleep and you will think of the desert, or you think of a stage, or you think of a moment. And that is just something really cool, that there aren't many things in life that will help you to continue dreaming and thinking like that, such as an event like that.
You mentioned that this experience helped you burn off anxieties, burn off certain things. Is there anything in particular that you hope now in the Arctic is stripped away?
Anything else to be stripped away, is it? Or any sense of self? Or I don't have anything preconceived going in. It's simply to go and do an event and experience an event. I'm not looking to achieve anything other than write a story about it. So there's nothing I feel to strip away. However, you don't know what's going to happen. You might end up finding out something, or figuring out something, or realizing something, or unlocking something. And whilst I might not be going to try and experience anything or feel anything or see anything, it may happen. And I think that comes back again to the environment and the wilderness and the experience, that you don't know what the experience is going to do to you. You may not want it or need it or feel it, and something may happen. So the short answer is that I don't know what's going to happen. I just have to go and experience it and come back.
I think that's a great attitude. I mean, people who take ayahuasca or whatever for their spiritual experience, it's those kind of people who go in with the least amount of expectation that usually have the deepest experiences with these kind of things. How would you sum up your motivation going into such a race?
I think it's a discipline rather than a motivation. So we all know motivation comes and goes. Like, we're not motivated all the time. Like, I'm not motivated all the time. Sessions like today on the ski erg or the rower are quite boring. They're very hard to get up for, that kind of arousal level for it. So I wouldn't say I'm very motivated to go and jump on the ski erg for half an hour, but I'm disciplined to go and get it done. I'm training for about 5-6 months for this race. I've missed one training session because I was sick. I had a chest infection. And that's just discipline to get everything that's supposed to be done and more. So I would do extra strength and conditioning and extra going for a surf a week where you're in the cold water and stuff like that. So I don't think motivation washes on these things. You really need a self-discipline to complete in these events.
I find it so fascinating how you motivate yourself for so many months to go through such a tough race. And absolutely fascinating. Barry, my last question for today is a very simple one, or maybe not. If you think of one simple sentence or one mantra, which inner sentence would it be that you would like to take on to the Arctic with you for that race?
I don't think it'd be a sentence or a man. Well, maybe. I think it came up recently. I used to do something with my clients to come to me to my fitness business, and that was KFR, and that was keep fecking running, or we say fecking instead of the other one. So it was KFR, and it was really helpful to them. Girls that would never have done a half marathon before, they signed up to the Ballina half marathon. The whole thing was KFR. We got these t-shirts that had KFR written on the back of them. And that was just keep going till you're finished. And it came up recently. I noticed one weekend, I actually started thinking about that myself, and the mantra of just KFR for myself, just keep going and don't stop. And it's very simple. It's easy to get behind, and it's not that cumbersome. It mightn't be as sexy as some of the mantras, that people could have, and Buddhism or whatnot, but it's simple and it works for me. And once you keep running, and considering I'm running now with an injury, and I'm not giving up, I think that's like the benefit to self, and the cost benefit analysis of being injured and emotional regulation and everything that running brings that helps with other things. And that all keeps coming back to KFR, keep fucking running, So that's it. It's quite simple. It's quite boring. It's not sexy, but it works.
And I guess it doesn't just work for the race, it also works for life, doesn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Barry, with that, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm so excited to hear about your experience and talk to you after the race. Have a great race, and best of luck.
Thanks, Chris.